Um, hello, hello. It's good to see your faces. Um, I am working on what we discussed last time as far as deadlines, and I think I am going to offer more than just the presentation or the paper. I think I'm going to do some other project options, and then that would work with each of the topics that you've chosen, but that would maybe lend itself to this online format just a little bit easier. So I haven't figured that out. I will post that hopefully in the next few days sometime, and then you can look at it, and then if you have questions, you can let me know. Anyone have anything they need or concerns before we start? Any questions for the good of the group? Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Hi, Anna, both Annas. Got some new folks. Camden's here, Dakota, Tara. Love it. I'm glad all of you are here, but those are folks that I haven't heard from yet. So I'm glad you all could join. So we are talking about this shift, just to catch you up. We're in the 1960s, and we're talking about the shift in, again, what topics are available for. It is a party, Joe. It is a party. I love it. We're talking about the topics that musicals can be about, or the topics about which musicals can focus. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And so we've been discussing West Side Story and the fact that there is violence, there's death, there's sexual assault, there's racism, there is definitely this heteronormative gender roles involved in that. And we also discussed Leonard Bernstein's score and how it really does feel like this other character in this particular musical. It gives us the vibe, it gives us aesthetic, it gives us atmosphere, it gives us culture, it gives us all kinds of things in ways that I don't think other musicals do to the degree that West Side Story, the score, does. I mean, it is really, really a masterpiece. So so let's pick it up here. Can everyone see the YouTube? Yeah. I'll have my blackberry sparkling water. Yay. Here we go.
Of the Berlin stories of Christopher Isherwood and a play based on them.
So now, then this reminds me, we talked about Cabaret, and did I post the link to Cabaret that you can watch it? I think I sent it, or you have it. Okay. There's a really good, it's actually before the Alan Cumming revival made it to Broadway. So it's at a small theater in the UK, and he's in it. He plays the MC, but man, it is an excellent production. So I highly recommend that. All right, so here's more about Cabaret.
The show depicted the debauchery of Berlin between the wars and the Nazi rise to power, presented by a master of ceremonies at the Kit Kat Club.
I was in the army in 1949 in Germany. I went to a little nightclub called Maxime's, which was in the cellar of a bombed out church.
I know this is a little bit of a review, but it'll help us get back in the vibe and the flow.
Diminutive MC came out with lipstick on his mouth and eyelashes and rouge to hide how really old he was.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen, je suis enchanté. Happy to see you fly the rest of the day.
Joel Grey, made up in a way that even if you knew what he looked like, he'd be unrecognizable, comes out and starts singing a song that we all know now as Willkommen. But my friend Sarah Fishko and I looked at each other and said, Is this show in German? We didn't know what it was. It was very out there, and it had all this sort of androgynous sexuality. It was mind-blowing. And the audience was baffled. It had a stronger effect on me than Fiddler 2 years earlier had, or Hello Dolly. You felt you were seeing something completely different.
Cabaret, I would say, pushed the envelope of what people were seeing in the Broadway musical. Most people thought it was a terrible idea, a musical about Nazi Germany, but Hal and John and Fred and Joe Mastroff had this very dark vision, and they found a framework in terms of the cabaret songs in which the musical numbers commented on the action.
Boris Aronson did the original set. Nobody's ever been greater designer than Boris Aronson. There were two musicals on stage. One took place in real rooms and one took place in limbo. And in limbo were these numbers which indirectly commented on the real book upstage. Somewhere in the middle of the second act, Sally Bowles leaves the real world, walks through a mylar curtain into the unreal limbo world and sings Cabaret.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play. Life is a cabaret, old chum.
At the end of that song, she goes and gets an abortion. What she's found out at the beginning of the song is that she's pregnant. What she decides at the end of the song is that she doesn't want to have the baby.
Right this way, your table's raining. Start by admitting.
That's a pretty powerful material for a Broadway musical comedy.
Life is a cabaret, old chum. Me a cabaret, old chum. And I love a cannibal.
I think that the thing that you have to take on board is the profound disruption of Vietnam and the awareness of the American public that they were in this terrible war that they couldn't get out of, that they really was not winnable, and it was on some level probably unjust. In song and theater, there was a great deal of protest against the war. And it divided the culture.
By 1967, the war in Vietnam and the protests against it were polarizing the country. Two young actors, Jerome Ragney and James Rado, seized upon that friction as the storyline for a new musical production. For backing, they sought out Joseph Papp, a maverick producer who had just created the Public Theater, a non-commercial venue downtown. Known for presenting Shakespeare in Central Park, Papp was also a champion of contemporary theater.
Vietnam was a major plot point in the show, but the war wasn't really the main thing. The main thing was the lifestyle. It seemed to be more about hippies growing their hair long and living in wearing different kind of clothes.
Gimme head with hair, long, beautiful hair, shining, gleaming, streaming, flax and wax. The show was called Hair. It was the first Broadway musical with an entire score of rock music.
Right. So this is quite a departure. 4 years prior to this, we had Fiddler, and now we're in 1968, 69, and Hair is what's really leading the smash hit that's on Broadway. So it's fascinating to me as we think back to Oklahoma, and soldiers that were getting ready to go off to war would come see Oklahoma, and they would be very emotional because they felt like this was the America that they were fighting for and they were defending, and so they would go off to war. And now we have this real sense of protest about the Vietnam War, and that's what's being presented on stage. 20 years later, 25 years later. That's quite a shift in a seemingly short amount of time. Has anyone seen Hair? Anyone ever seen it on stage? Yeah, some folks.
I have.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about it, Casey?
I was also in it a couple of years ago, which was a lot of fun.
Ooh.
I think it's a really interesting musical because it's so non-linear and there's so many important themes in it. I think that even though it's set in the 60s, I think that they transcend into like modern day and what the world looks like now too.
Absolutely. I happened to, they did a Broadway revival about, it's been 8 or 9 years now. That was really powerful. They did all this really interesting audience interaction. I remember I got a daisy from one of the actors, like they would come into the audience, and it was really, really a powerful production. And I agree with Casey, the themes are not antiquated. They're very, very current. In fact, one of our grads from the PhD program, Dr. Matt Salzberg, he teaches at Salisbury University, where, if you know Michael Beverly, he did his undergrad there. But Matt was in the middle of rehearsing Hair, and they had to cancel. So, and I know that it was felt very, with the conversations he and I have had about it, felt very, very relevant to our current situations, even down to like, is it masculine for men to have long hair? I mean, that's still, in some circles, still a question, which I find strange, but it doesn't make it any less true. Okay, cool. Let's keep going with Hair here.
I'd never seen a Broadway musical when I did Hair, when I wrote Hair. I like funky music. So that was, and when they said, well, we want a rock and roll score, I said, well, to me, that's.
Hold, please.
Show that allowed the generation gap that had appeared at this point in time when civil protest, rock and roll, and dope, all of it arrived at the same time. Somehow at this show, parents went because they wanted to understand their kids. Kids went because they wanted to show their parents what it was. It filled that gap very, very well.
Every singer, dancer, hippie, panther, you name it. We were all online waiting to audition for the show. And we went into a series of rehearsals like I'd never seen before, unlike any other theatrical show I think I've worked on. We did a lot of exercises dealing with caring for one another, loving one another, in order to be loving to the audience.
At one another, short of breath, walking proudly in our winter coats, wearing smells from laboratories, facing a dying day.
With its downtown run completed, the show moved first to a disco club called the Cheetah, and then, with new director Tom O'Horgan at the helm, Hare moved to the Biltmore Theatre. Drug use, obscene language, a cast intermingling with the audience, and frontal nudity were all central to Broadway's newest hit.
I think it affected a lot of people. People still come up to me and say that it changed their life. But I don't know if it changed Broadway very much. We had our little day in the sun and then we retired.
Hair ran on Broadway for 4 sold-out years. Along with its enduring hit songs, the show helped to establish the world of off-Broadway and Joe Papp's public theater as important new players in the development of the commercial musical.
So we have sort of this new idea that shows can be successful even if they're not on Broadway, and that there are different audiences that will attend theater that maybe isn't on a Broadway stage, but off Broadway or downtown. If you ever get a chance to go to the public, I actually went there for the first time in November when I was in New York, and it is a really, really cool space. They have several smallish performance venues. I had the chance to see the play For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough by in Natatsi Shange. I know it's pronounced different ways. But they had premiered that work there in 1975, and this is the first revival they had done of it. It was incredible, and we were in the round, and it was awesome. But I would venture to say that there are definitely some musicals that thrive in those smaller, more grassroots kind of non-commercial feeling sort of venues. I mean, they're not going to play at the Marquee. They're not going to play at the Broadway Theater. They're not going to play at the Schubert, but they're gonna really have a life off Broadway in some of those other venues. The Signature Theater is a great off Broadway venue. So I believe somebody is doing that topic. I don't recall, but it would be a really good topic. What is that off Broadway musical movement about? And then of course Hair did go to Broadway, but it definitely enlivened this idea of not just an off-Broadway play, but the new concept of an off-Broadway musical. So in that way, it's really, really influential. Besides having rock music on stage, which was new for sure.
Another 100 people just got off of the train and came up through the ground line. Another 100 people just got off of the bus and are looking around. And another 100 people who got off of the plane and are looking at us who got off the train and the plane and the bus maybe yesterday. It's a city of strangers. Some come to work, some to play. A city of strangers.
It really wasn't until Steve Sondheim came along with Company that somebody was able to take all the stuff that had happened before, the Rodgers and Hammerstein influence, the director influence, the choreographer influence, all that stuff, and morph into something new that sort of said, okay, that's that, now we're into another.
By the end of the 60s, Stephen Sondheim had collaborated on 6 Broadway shows. He followed up his lyric writing for West Side Story with another landmark, Gypsy, and then wrote both music and lyrics for a string of shows, including A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. In 1970, Sondheim teamed up with Hal Prince on Company and plunged the musical into a new era.
I wanted you to read it because I thought...
The show was based upon a group of short plays by George Furth, which dramatized the realities of married life in New York City.
It's the little things you do together, that make perfect relationships. The hobbies you pursue together, savings you accrue together, looks you misconstrue together, that make marriage a joy.
Company does deal with upper middle class people with upper middle class problems. Broadway theater has been, for many years, supported by those people. they really wanted to escape, and here we're saying, bring it right back in their faces, what they've been trying to, what they came to a musical to avoid, they suddenly find facing them on the stage.
It's not so hard to be married. It's much the simplest of crimes. It's not so hard to be married. I've done it 3 or 4 times.
In addition to the provocative subject matter, Sondheim and Prince also challenged the audience by deconstructing the storyline of the musical.
Probably the major thing that made Company controversial was that there was no plot. The audience kept waiting for a plot. We played with nonlinear storytelling. Obviously, I had preceded it with Cabaret, which was both linear and nonlinear. Now we made our way right into a whole nonlinear evening.
All right. Anyone seen Company? Know what it's about?
I love Company.
I do too.
I'm too young to ever be in it right now, but it's great.
Yeah. Well, give yourself 10 years and you'll be perfect for it. It's for it's older folks. Yeah, it's really interesting. There's actually a revival on Broadway where Bobby, who's the main character, who's not married, but he's friends with all of these people that are couples that are married, is actually is being played by a female. They did it in the West End, and now it's on Broadway. I think it's in previews. I don't think it's opened yet, or, well, I mean, it's not happening right now, but it's supposed to be excellent. And Sondheim is involved in it because they've changed some of the couple dynamics and things. It's a really great show. There is a version of it that Raul Esparza plays Bobby, and it's one of the first musicals, the revival of it, not this original, that started this trend of actors in shows playing the instruments for the show and acting and singing and dancing. So they're their own sort of pit orchestra. We saw that trend happen. And sometimes there are some shows that still do that, but this is that revival was one of the first ones. I think it's like 2006 maybe. And Raul Esparza is excellent in it. I highly recommend it. I think you could probably get it on Amazon Prime, or, if you're bored right now, it would be a great thing to watch because it's such a good show. And I actually had the chance to do it a couple of years ago. I did a reading of it for my best friend's 40th birthday. We did a reading of it. It was awesome. So, but we have this idea of this nonlinear storytelling, and very similar to what Casey was talking about with Hair, in that it's very much based on it's character driven. It's not plot driven. And so we have these, what I would call little vignette scenes in Company, where Bobby goes to visit this couple, or Bobby sleeps with the stewardess and there's a song. And so we just sort of see what Bobby's life is about. It's not driven by this narrative of like this happens. It's not a cause and effect thing necessarily. It's very different. Once you see it, or if you get to see it, it'll make sense. But that's new in musical theater as well, right? We'd worked so hard to get the book musical up and going and get a musical that had a script with songs and dances and acting and scenes that furthered the plot. And now we're deconstructing that. And so, of course, have to know the rules in order to break them. And of course, Sondheim breaks almost all the rules. So let's keep going here.
The notion of a series of snapshots in a man's life taking place in a metaphysical birthday party, and it keeps changing and flowing back and forth, and you don't know if the guests know each other, and there's a girl in a bridal gown, and it's all very weird.
Oh, well, that's weird. What just happened?
Hair was the first show that
Storyline of Jungle Jim set. The show's songs didn't.
Hold on, something's going on here. I'm trying to fix it. Oh gosh. There we go. Okay, can everybody see that? Can you guys see the YouTube clip? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not emerge from scenes as in traditional musical.
Back it up just a little bit here.
Means everybody here, because if everybody's here, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding. I appreciate you going even more. I mean, you must know it's a better thing to do and not a word of Paul. I'm Paul, you know the man I'm going to marry, but I'm not because it wouldn't ruin anyone as wonderful as he is. Thank you all for the gifts and the flowers. Thank you all. Now it's back to the showers. Don't tell Paul that I'm not getting married today.
The cast of Company inhabited an abstract urban world and rode a working elevator within Boris Aronson's Jungle Gym set. The show's songs did not emerge from scenes as in traditional musicals. Instead, they provided commentary on the characters or their situations.
All the numbers in Company are inserted like nuts into a fruitcake. They're inserted into the scenes, or they occupy, in the case of Barcelona, the whole scene. But none of them just arises out of dialogue the way, I'd been trained to do by Oscar Hammerstein.
Where you going?
Barcelona. Don't get up.
Do you have to?
Yes, I have to. Don't get up.
When Company opened in April of 1970, its cynical view of modern relationships and marriage polarized the Broadway audience.
Musicals for decades have had no doubts about if you find the right person, you may go the rocky road of love, but it would always lead to so-called happy ending. We were saying something ambiguous, which is actually there are no endings. It keeps going on, is what really Company's about.
Broadway was always about fun, about joy, whereas the city was a plaything for Gershwin. In Sondheim's world, it's a place where you lose things, where you can't find yourself, where you're alienated, where another 100 people come out of the subway. So it's an ambivalent ending. But I think to the extent those endings are earned, they are more mature and more interesting to sing about.
Oh, well, I guess. Okay.
What?
I'll stay.
They still want a happy ending. And a happy ending can have a lot of people dead, like West Side Story, but it's still a happy ending.
I don't agree with that.
By the early 70s, New York City, like the rest of America, was in a deep recession, and nowhere was that more evident than on the Great White Way.
This area in the 70s was a sewer. This was the den of pornography.
All right, I want to talk about this for just a second. So I don't know how many of you have been to New York, but 42nd Street and Times Square looks like, Disney World. I mean, it's very family oriented. It's not at all what they're about to describe. And I think they talk about it, but what happened is in the mid to late 80s, Michael Eisner, who was in charge of Disney at that point, said, we want to bring they wanted to do, what's the first Disney theatrical would have been Lion King. We want to bring Lion King to Broadway, but we can't have families next door to, adult films and strip clubs and those kinds of things and sex workers on the street. This is Disney. This is not me. I'm just telling you what happened. And so Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York at that time. He said, it'll be cleaned up. It'll be we'll make it so that it's family friendly. And literally in the span of like 2 months, all of the people that were homeless, under-resourced, sex workers, all of that disappeared. And now 42nd Street is, now there are Disney shows that are at different theaters, but the New Amsterdam was the first one. And I'm telling you, they changed the feel and the vibe of Times Square seemingly overnight. And they'll talk more details here in a second, but it's a little eerie about the way that they went about doing this. Would be a great topic. If you don't like your topic, this would be the Disneyfication of Times Square would be a great topic. So anyway, I just want to throw that in there.
Prostitution, felony crime, drug dealing, you name it.
What Broadway needed was a hit. This time, it would come not from a big-time star, but from the supporting cast, the dancers, the self-titled gypsies who provided the backbone of a musical.
Of course, dancers on Broadway are blue-collar workers. It's a life commitment, and it's something that either you have inside of you and you have to do it, or maybe you should go sell hamburgers instead, because it's not for sissies, contrary to popular belief.
It was a former gypsy who reinvigorated Broadway, making dance so popular that leg warmers became a fashion statement. Michael DeFilia first appeared in a touring company of West Side Story, but on Broadway, he became known as Michael Bennett.
I met Michael on Hullabaloo, a TV variety show, in 1964. One day, we're dancing side by side, and we're bringing the jerk to new heights. And I say, Michael, what are you going to do when you grow up? You can't keep doing this the rest of your life. Did you ever think of that, huh? And he said, yes, I'm going to be a choreographer. And I went, oh, good luck. Don't forget about me.
Bennett got his first job choreographing on Broadway in 1966. He went on to stage dance numbers in Company and, with Hal Prince, co-directed Sondheim's next musical, Follies. In 1973, Bennett began to work on his own show. Without any pre-existing story, he held a series of workshops where he tape-recorded dancers talking about their experiences.
When we started a chorus line, it was called the Dancers Project, and it was a secret. We would start every day with a blank page. And our lives were a part of the process.
You know, this was the first time there was such a thing as a workshop. And we were young guys, and we were all just desperate to put on something very special, very new. All we talked about is, let's do something on Broadway like they've never seen before.
Again, step, kick, kick. With backing from Joseph Papp, Bennett spent an unprecedented 18 months developing the musical. A plot line emerged about dancers auditioning for a part in a new show.
That connects with turn, out, in, jump, step, kick, leap, kick, touch. Got it? Going on. 5, 6, 7, 8, a turn, touch.
In the beginning, there was a very difficult balance between making this about dancers but not making this about dancers.
5, 6, 7, 8, a turn, touch.
At what point can you get away from the dancer metaphor and get into the world of we're all on a line? We're all in this together.
Who am I anyway? Am I my resume? So many faces all around, and here we go. I need this job. Oh God, I need this show.
That did not happen until one day in rehearsal that Michael Bennett took a chalk and went wham and drew a line on the floor. And he said, that's the line. We're all on the line. Well, now the common denominator of all these people is, God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. But da 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 da.
make it. I'll never make it. He doesn't like the way I look. He doesn't like the way I act. He doesn't like the way I
Everyone has dreams and hopes, and there was something in that show for everybody. Men who were just retired would write me letters and say, your character made me go out and start a new business. Football players would say the line. They would talk about the line, being on the line.
Most dramatically, for the show's finale, Bennett transformed a classic Broadway kick line into a bittersweet comment on the life of a dancer.
Singular sensation, every little step she takes. One really combination, every move that she makes.
You had an entire, 2 hours talking about these individual people and that all this torture they have to go through to get a job, to be on Broadway, is to be in an assembly line. That was the genius of Michael. He gave the audience what they expected. What he meant was something else.
A chorus line opened at the Public Theater and quickly moved to the Shubert on Broadway in July of 1975. It stayed there for over 15 years, breaking all existing box office records.
Michael Bennett and the chorus line totally changed the musical theater. It really saved the financial fortunes of the Shubert organization. It was a catalyst for the improvement of this area. And of course, this area now is the most desirable area in New York.
I saw a chorus line at the Shubert Theater in Chicago. I was in the last row of the last balcony. I saw the show. I went back to my dancing school, to my teacher, and I said, you've got to teach me to do turn, turn, out, in, jump, step, which was in the opening combination. 2 years later, I auditioned, I got the show, and I went on tour with the show. And when I went on the first time, and I was doing the opening combination, and I remember thinking to myself, I wonder who's in the back row. True story.
At the same time a chorus line was moving to Broadway.
Anyone seen a chorus line? Yeah.
I have.
Thoughts about it? What do you guys think about it?
I like how it's so real. Like, it's just people's life stories and how like everyone's life experiences can be so life-changing for them. And like they're all unified and they all came together in this one spot, but yet they came from so many different places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I love how the stories are real of the people. Like I've read a lot into that, like all the character stuff is like based on real experiences of the original group that they put together. It's really, that seems really cool to me that it's not even like made up stuff, a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. Have I sent you the link to Every Little Step, the documentary about the revival? Have we talked about that? Okay. There's the latest revival, they did a documentary about remounting that production, and they really go into depth about Michael Bennett's process, and they share some of the tapes that he recorded and then transcribed. So in the performance studies world, this is called ethnography, where you study a group of people and you gather information. They let you into that particular community and you study it from an internal point of view. And then sometimes those characters create maybe a theatrical show. I've actually done an ethnography and then wrote a play about my research. Sometimes it's not theater, it's performance studies, and people will do one person shows, or present, do some sort of adaptation of that and put other writings with the interviews so you can do lots of different kinds of things. But I agree with you, Merk. I think that there's something really powerful about the fact that these are true stories. Not that fictional stories aren't powerful on their own, but when you think about the Broadway dancer, which, as Tommy Tune said, it is a hard life. They are the sort of assembly line, blue collar, worker bee folks when it comes to the Broadway musical. To put them front and center, I think is such a powerful choice. A lot of times in theater, people say there are no small parts, only small actors. If someone gets an ensemble role and they feel like it's not what they, you know what I mean? Not everybody, I'm just saying sometimes an ensemble of a show or a dance ensemble of a show can be looked down on as less than. And what Chorus Line does is it busts that myth apart. And it really says that everyone is essential. And not just everyone as a performer, but everyone as a human. This is there's a movie version of it with Michael Douglas plays the director. Man, I can't think of the character's name. Anyway, there's a director that's a character in A Chorus Line. And he's sort of, usually at the beginning, he's placed in the audience and he's yelling direction and asking people to tell, different dancers to step downstage from the line and tell their stories. And I remember watching that movie when I was probably 7 or 8 years old and being just mesmerized by the stories that dancers told. And then Bjork Lee, who is the woman that was in the original cast, she's very an integral part of the revival. And I saw her at a diner one time in New York, and I was like, oh! I didn't talk to her because I didn't want to interrupt her day, but I got really excited that Bjork Lee was at the table next to me. So anyway, I highly recommend that you see A Chorus Line. It is really, really powerful. And again, structurally, it's this idea of vignettes, right? It's the idea of this is a character-driven, not a plot-driven show. And the way that it was stitched and woven together is fascinating when it comes to the structure, the architecture of the script and the songs. Any other thoughts about Chorus Line? Yeah. Francisco, then Catherine.
One thing I've noticed about this show is that it's, I kind of put it in the same ballpark as Wicked, in that it's been so widely done that sometimes people let it get away from them, like the context of it. Like I've seen some productions where the closing number, they just go full glamour with it. There's like, it's just like, well, isn't this like a cool closing number? Which it definitely is, but it definitely, it kind of takes away the power of suddenly seeing all these varied people suddenly hitting the same notes, doing the same choreography, wearing the same thing. Yeah.
Interesting. Catherine.
I thought the comment was interesting when that chorus dancer was talking about how he saw Chorus Line and then saw it, and even though the plot like makes it sound like the dancer life is really hard, that he wanted to pursue it. And I think that's something special about this show, is that it like I'm not a dancer at all, and when I watch this show it makes me want to be, because it's crazy how like they're just like the workers of Broadway. Like they'll get one show and then go to the next, and they're constantly employed in like so many different things. And they talk about it a lot in the show, where they're like, I have another audition after this, and it makes you want their lifestyle and also kind of not. It's crazy. It
is. There's something. Well, I think for me, I see their passion and their dedication. And that's, it is also on the flip side, them contributing to something bigger than themselves in this really interesting way. And they have this skill set of the way that they can use their body to tell a story that most of the population will never have access to, be able to do it at the level that these dancers do. And so I agree, it's gripping, it's fascinating, it draws you in. I'll send you the link for Every Little Step, because it's so good, because you're seeing the process of creating a revival of A Chorus Line, and it's hitting every plot point of the show A Chorus Line as it's showing you the architecture of the revival. It is so awesome. Yeah, other thoughts about Chorus Line? Very cool. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and stop there for today. Thank you for jumping on. Have a great spring break. We won't do anything next week, but I'll be sending out just some messages and some updates as far as this project, the final project that we're working on. So my goal is to get that done today, so you have some time, a little more time to think about it. And again, if you need to adjust your topic, I'm glad to dialogue with you about that. If you need anything, everyone seems to be doing okay as far as they've got internet access and everybody's doing all right. But if you need something, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right, everybody cool? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Maybe I can end it here.